Everybody out there talking about subs and likes and comments and retention, but the surest way to know a show is growing is, Colin and Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a presidential debate tonight. It's no accident they're waiting until 9 o'clock Eastern to start that thing. You schedule it on a Tuesday night, that's okay. Just push it back a little bit. That is growth. That is growth. All thanks to you guys. I will not hear another scenario besides that one. We're jam-packed, high atop just a spectacular downtown Nashville, Tennessee. Nice little sunset going down as we speak outside the window here Tuesday night, September 10th, the year of our Lord, 2024. We are proudly brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, and I proudly and nervously tell you I'm ready to predict Week 3. We've gone over everything. I've got some strong thoughts. I've got some kind of strong predictions. What have we learned about this sport, by the way? This great sport of ours has given us 2 weeks. Not a preview magazine anymore. We've gotten 2 actual weeks of college football. I think I may have figured a few things out. You probably think you figured a few things out. You and I may combine to be wrong about a few of those things, but I will discuss what I think I know through 2 weeks tonight. I got a brand new JP poll dropping. There's big movement in the JP poll tonight. I told you we're not going to hesitate to be pretty aggressive on that thing, as aggressive as a power rating can be. And remember, kids, as Meemaw once taught all of us, rankings are not ratings and vice versa. I've got an added best bet. I got a rare totals bet to drop on you tonight. So we're jam-packed. We got to move. That's our agreement with ABC. You move the presidential debate back an hour. We will move through the show pretty rapidly tonight. Louisville, Kentucky is tuned in. Brunswick, Georgia. Arvada, Colorado. And Patterson, New Jersey. Thank you guys so much. A lot of stuff happening. I heard a hot rumor as we dive into the show tonight. I heard a hot rumor about the Pate State store being ready to reopen. That's just what I heard. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. No, it's not. And so just make sure you're following on the socials. A lot of stuff goes on outside the show. Make sure you're following on the socials. So what have we learned so far in college football this year? Everyone thought they knew some stuff in spring and summer, preview magazine season, etc. Then the week 1 results come in, and now we've got week 2 results in. And I'm going to give you things that I think I figured out so far. One thing I've learned is Clemson is still in every conversation they were always in. So once upon a time, Clemson was the favorite or co-favorite to win the ACC. Then they get just smoked by Georgia in week 1, like a lot of folks will end up having happen to them this week. And some folks, including me, got a little doubtful about Clemson. But it wasn't my fault. The model started to sell its Clemson stock as well. And then Clemson annihilates a pretty good App State team. And now they're right back. JP Poll's got them right back where they were rated in the preseason. They are the number 2 odds team to win the ACC. They haven't played a conference game. They don't play Miami in the regular season. So if you thought Clemson was an ACC title contender, which means they're a playoff contender, what's changed? What's changed? They certainly rid themselves and rid everyone of that memory, that ugly week 1 memory, and now they are about to dive into conference play. And like I said, they don't play Miami. They go to Florida State in a couple of weeks. But outside that Louisville game at home, at Virginia Tech later in the year, there's still a lot that remains to be decided in the ACC. So Clemson, I've learned, although I thought I wouldn't have, I've relearned, they're still eligible and they're still capable of doing everything I thought they'd do. I've learned, unfortunately, it's not going to happen for Colorado. Just don't think it's going to happen for the Buffs this year. And by it, I mean being a surprise contender to win the Big 12. They played Nebraska last week. It's not a conference game, but what happened in the Nebraska game is going to be rinse and repeated a few times in Big 12 play. Big misconception about the Big 12 is it's a pinball conference. And it's not. It's a roll up your sleeves, run the football, play defense conference. It just doesn't have the elite top-end first-round NFL draft-type talent that you would find in the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the SEC. But those are really good third, fourth, fifth-year player type programs, real culture programs. And so it's not an easy task. I don't care if you got Travis Hunter. I don't care if you got Shador, especially if you can't protect him. It's not an easy task to go into this conference and just, pop your knuckles. Hey, we're Colorado. Okay. Well, we're Kansas State. We're Arizona. We're Utah. We're Kansas. It's not going to be an easy road for Colorado. Next up, let's go out west here for a second. I think I've learned Oregon is not Oregon yet. I say that because we've watched them play the entire state of Idaho through the first couple of weeks. They struggled against Idaho, period. They struggled against Boise State last week, needed a walk-off field goal to beat the Broncos. And it may be that they were a little overrated early in the season, but the difference is, unlike some of these teams that just were rated too high. I think Oregon may have been rated too soon. I'm not selling on Oregon. I think Oregon's one of those teams, we see it every year, that is going to eventually blossom into the version of themselves that many of us thought they would be in the preseason. They just weren't ready to go yet. They were not ready to go. Sometimes week one arrives way too early for teams. Now, unfortunately, some of them get clipped and they get upset and then they're out of contention for stuff. Oregon has not lost. They're going to go to Oregon State this week. Then they start, they start conference play the next week. Oregon, I think, at some point this year will be fine. Fortunately for them, their schedule was not front-loaded. They play Ohio State, but they didn't play them early. They go to Michigan, but they don't do it early. They go to Wisconsin. They do that way later in the season, so they've got time to work it out. Now, in your subconscious, you kind of know that, and sometimes it can lead to, again, subconsciously not having a sense of urgency about yourself. Now, if Dan Lanning were on the show, which he's been many times, he would swear, no, there's urgency. We preach urgency no matter what the schedule is. I know he does. That's why I said subconsciously. You can't help but know you're going to be favored by a lot the first few weeks of the season. And even if Lanning himself doesn't fall victim to that, sometimes your players can. So still mixing and matching on the offensive line. I think they'll get things figured out. I think Oregon will still be a Big Ten and national championship contending type team. They just are not that yet. But that's okay. You're not everything that you're going to be in week 2 and week 3. But as much as Oregon doesn't look like a national title contender, I've learned Tennessee's a national title contender. I went beyond SEC there. I went beyond just playoff. See, there's this tiered language that we use these days with an expanded playoff. And if you say someone's a playoff contender, that's a fancy way of saying they can make it, but they can't win it. Now, Tennessee playing the kind of defense they're playing now, combined with just Josh Heupel, anytime he's got elite talent at quarterback, they can win it. They are a definite team in the mix, along with your Georgias and your Bamas and your Texases, Ohio States. They can win this thing. The difference is you will blindly buy into the notion that all the other ones will. I've got a solid portion of our audience, I go back and forth with you guys all the time, who believe Tennessee just flat out can't do this anymore. I think it's just because of recency bias and you haven't seen them. If you're a 20-year-old viewer of the show, you haven't lived in a world where Tennessee's a national title contender. Well, you have now, because they are again. Just because they haven't in your lifetime doesn't mean they won't in your lifetime, maybe as soon as this year. So what did we always say? I'm going to talk about USC in a little while, but what have we always said with these coaches like Heupel? Man, if they can ever pair a pretty good to elite defense with what they do offensively, woo! Now, normally it doesn't happen because normally, stylistically, DNA-wise, you got to give something up to get something, but Tennessee's figured something out, and that travels. You know, they'll go to Oklahoma in a couple of weeks. Eventually, they'll go to Georgia. They didn't have a shot against Georgia last time they went down there. They'll have a shot now. They will have a shot because they got things that travel. Next, unfortunate again, we're kind of trying to go up and down with positive, negative. I have learned that this was not a reloading year for Florida State. This was a resetting year. Notice I didn't say rebuild. I think it's a reset kind of year. It's not as simple to me down there as, well, we'll get them next year. Now, they still got 10 games to play, so they shouldn't be thinking about next year at all. But I'm thinking about next year because I have punted on the season for Florida State. So I'm capable of doing that. But I'm thinking it's not as easy as let's dip into the portal and let's reload for next year. I'm thinking let's reassess how we run this program and how we build this roster. Now, I said that the other day, and folks said, well, Norvell's been there, 4 or 5 years at this point. You can't do that. Well, of course you can. Anytime you realize the right thing to do, you do that right thing. I don't care if you're 2 years in or 10 years in. If you think that you have gone about building your roster the wrong way, then you immediately make moves to rectify that. And at Florida State, that just means recruiting high school talent a whole lot better and more effectively than they have, and making moves on your staff however you need to in order to accomplish that goal. That's the long and short of it. So however they have to go about that, they got to go about that. This year, I think the one positive is it's been such a glaring slap in the face. It's been such a glaring shock to the senses. There can be no room for confusion down there about what the problem is. I don't think Mike Norvell ever wants to live through another year where he's got to go through summer and then fall camp and look at all this talent in front of him, but chew his fingernails down to the nubs wondering, I got a bunch of individuals. Do I have a team, though? Because he found out the hard way And he's not alone, but we're talking about Florida State. Florida State has found out the hard way, stacking a bunch of really good individuals does not always equal a team. And it's no guarantee that you'll have great teams even if you build through high school. But man, you will have guys who have been immersed in your system and your culture, and folks who don't worry about things like doing away with the war chant on third down, folks who don't worry about their draft stock on third down. They're just worried about, what they can do for Florida State, as opposed to simply what can Florida State do for them. Sheet of paper gets flipped over. Hey, staying in the Sunshine State here for a second. I personally, don't know about you guys, I've learned the evidence was not lying to us about Miami. The evidence was there that this was going to be a really, really good team. Many people were unwilling to buy into it because of whatever your preconceived notion is about Miami or Mario Cristobal. I hear the same stuff about Tennessee. I hear the same stuff about USC. It's just because they haven't been something in a while, automatically there's this layer of doubt that's not baked in for other programs, which is fine. But when you looked at what they had done, when you looked at the moves they had made, not the least among them getting Cam Ward, all the evidence was there to believe that this team was capable of winning the ACC and then some. And then they go and do what they did in week 1 against Florida. Now, if you were already a doubter of Miami, I don't know why you would have backed off the ledge at this point. All you got to do is say, well, of course they beat Florida. A bunch of folks will beat Florida this year. So if I was a doubter of Miami coming into the season, I'd still be a doubter. I wasn't a doubter. I picked them to win the conference. I picked them to have a first-round bye in the playoffs. So I've seen everything to affirm what I already believed. But now they're going to go through a schedule here where they will not be on national radars a whole lot. That Virginia Tech game in a few weeks lost a bunch of its luster because Virginia Tech lost to Vanderbilt. They go to Louisville October 19th, which I think is one of the games of the year in that conference. But is America really going to focus its sights on Louisville, Kentucky for an ACC game? I don't know that they will. And so you'll start to hear about them down the stretch when the playoff rankings are coming out and when FanDuel is continuously updating those ACC championship odds. But Miami does not have those 2 or 3 marquee games left on the schedule like we talk about with Tennessee or like we even talk about with USC. So it's still going to have to be a little bit of blind belief, because if you still don't believe in Miami, there is not that one game coming up in the regular season where they can prove themselves to you. I think we just came back from Ann Arbor last week. I think that last year didn't really matter. Last year doesn't matter with Michigan. It was never going to matter. What did you hear a lot of times, even last week when folks were talking about this Texas-Michigan game, if someone picked Michigan? You heard a lot of things that really didn't matter. Things like, you're going to go in there against the defending national champ? Well, no, you're not. The trophy doesn't play football. The trophy's in the trophy case where trophies live. And a lot of those pieces are gone, and a lot of those coaches are gone. And so this year's team was going to have to stand on its merits. You don't ever defend a championship. It's not pro wrestling. You don't walk out the tunnel with the strap over your shoulder. This year's team is on display. This year's team's not nearly as good as last year's team. That is not revelatory by any stretch if you understood what was on last year's team and what is on this year's team. But there was, I guess, this hype bubble that still needed to be popped a little bit. So now it's been popped. So now you can get to work. We are talking, and as you and I are talking, they're getting ready to play Arkansas State. I happen to think Michigan will have a really good week this week. And you may say, well, so what? It's Arkansas State. They got USC coming up, first off. They got 10 more games coming up. There's a big difference in Michigan's not going to compete for the Big Ten championship and Michigan's going to go 6-6. Just because you don't compete for the Big Ten championship, you put an 8 or a 9 win season up, it's still pretty good, all things considered. Not up to the standard they want to meet, but all things considered, it could be a whole lot worse. Well, you need to take care of business against teams like Arkansas State. I'm strangely, just morbidly interested to see that Arkansas State game. Next up, oh boy, so we didn't plan it this way, but it makes sense. I think folks are still misunderstanding Texas. Now, part one of the misunderstanding that quickly got rectified was Texas is a finesse fireworks type team, and they'll go in there and they'll face a really, really physical team like Michigan, edge Michigan if it turns into a street fight. Well, clearly that wasn't the case. Clearly Texas went in there, wanted a fight, started the fight, dominated the fight, and then ended the fight on their terms. Now, here's the next big misconception you need to correct in your mind if you're still thinking it. I have heard this week a lot of people talking about how good Sark's used the portal and how much the portal has sort of quasi-built this Texas team into a contender. The portal hasn't built Texas into a contender. High school recruiting has. And if you want to go back and watch that game against Michigan, go look at what the Texas offensive line did. And then I want you to check where every one of those starting five came from. Because their last stop before they were in Austin was high school. They built that thing entirely through high school. Don't misunderstand me. They have done a great job leveraging the portal. They have gone to the portal to backfill at receiver, for example. I'm not denying that. Tight end as well with Nyblack. I'm not denying that. But the nucleus of this team is not its wide receiver core. I think one of the big differences with the way this Texas team is built and the way that previous Ohio State teams were built is we talked about those Ohio State receivers the last few years as well. When it came time to win fights, when it came time to win games on the line of scrimmage, to get off the field on third down, to put together a sustained drive, to close out one game, ironically against Michigan, those Ohio State teams couldn't do it. This Texas team is capable of it because their identity is just a little bit different than those previous Ohio State teams. I still don't think everyone understands that about them. But they'll learn. Easy way or hard way, they'll learn. Next up, this was sort of sad, so that was happy. This is sort of sad. Notre Dame, I have learned, is not ready to be a primetime program yet. I didn't say Notre Dame sucked. They don't. There's a lot of rungs on the ladder of college football. Everyone wants to either be the top or the bottom. They want to classify teams as great or terrible. Notre Dame is not terrible. They're not great. They're closer to great than terrible. They're probably somewhere around pretty good to really good. And then there are several rungs still above that, great, elite, etc. They are not in those categories yet. And after week one, they went into Texas A&M and won. I think a lot of folks thought maybe they had taken that next step, but most importantly and most unfortunately, I think they believed inside the walls of that program that they had taken that next step. And they believed it so much that they really didn't prepare the next week the way that they had prepared. It was like they had prepared for a one-game season. It's like they had prepared for a Super Bowl, went and won the Super Bowl, and then someone called them and said, no, you guys got 11 more to play. What? Oh, well, good. It's just Northern Illinois. Nope, not the way it works. You don't have those caliber athletes. You can't afford to do that even if you do have that. But you especially can't. I mean, you got outgained by 100 yards by Northern Illinois. This is multiple times now as a double-digit favorite, multiple times against unranked teams that Marcus Freeman has lost. I don't think the guy's a bad coach. He's still a very young coach, relatively speaking. The question is not that in my mind. My question is, have they gotten to certain points yet? And they haven't gotten to that point yet. They're not ready to be that kind of program yet. It's not the craziest concept that a second or third, what is he, 21, 2, 3, a fourth-year head coach, I think that's where Marcus Freeman is. It's not the craziest concept in the world that he wouldn't be there yet. But we've seen guys get there. Kirby Smart, year two, had Georgia in a national championship game. So we've had varying degrees of immediate to fairly immediate success. That's not quite Marcus Freeman yet. Maybe it never will be, or maybe it will be and it just takes 5 or 6 years. And lastly, as far as the things I've learned this year, I have learned that USC, to me, is the story of the year in college football so far. Lincoln Riley forever has been one of the very best play callers and offensive coordinator types in this sport. He happens to be a head coach, but he is also his offensive coordinator, essentially. He's been that for a long time. Every quarterback is a Heisman Trophy contender, rewrote offensive record books at Oklahoma, had him as a double-digit winner every year, goes to USC. Everyone thinks this is going to be an immediate explosion, and it's not, because he improperly hired or imported defensive staffers, and that dug him a little bit of a hole. And to his credit, he tried to correct not only with better hires, but also a philosophy and program shift in the spring last year, or this year, and it's worked. That's the story. It's worked. A lot of guys have tried to change things about themselves before, but see, the thing about changing yourself is it's really hard to do because you are yourself. You are what you are. You've got to be willing to change what you are. It's not window dressing. You can't just say a bunch of stuff in a microphone and say things like, we're going to be a defensive-oriented team. You're Lincoln Riley. No, you're not. Well, he meant it. He meant it. Credit to him for not just making the hire, but he made the hires, plural, and it's so noticeable. Overnight, it's noticeable, which means they weren't totally void of defensive talent. I've been surprised by it. Like, I thought Lynn coming over from UCLA is one thing, and that staff being massively upgraded is one thing, but you can only do, as a chef, what your ingredients give you the capability to do. And even the best chefs would tell you that. Clearly, I roll in the highest of culinary circles. You know what? Southern Cal fans, to their credit, I got to talk to my friends over on the Peristyle. You guys knew your team. Maybe there were some better ingredients in the kitchen than we knew. And Alex Grinch he's just playing play school in there. I think Southern Cal is the story of the year. Now, the year is 2 weeks old, and so we're going into week 3. Are they off, Jesse? They got a bye week? Oh, you can't talk to me. That's right. IFB problems. They are going to Michigan next week. Now, I don't need to sell you on that game. I think you already understand ramifications for both sides, but that's why that Arkansas State-Michigan game is very important to me this week, too. I think USC is the story of the year in college football so far. And speaking of tradition, unlike any other, Kublik texting me while I'm live on air. See, I could record this show, and we could just remove all this. I don't do it. And I won't let negativity like this stop us. We will be live, as live can be. Academy Sports and Outdoors will be as there as they can possibly be. We're going to be in Columbia, South Carolina Saturday. Do you understand, especially because we could have inclement weather, how essential those Academy canopies and tents will be this Saturday? Not to mention the chairs, not to mention the grills, not to mention all the other tailgating essentials and equipment and whatnot, but the canopies. You look across a tailgating lot or a tailgating quad or a circle or whatnot, and just as far as the eye can see, Academy Sports and Outdoors tents and canopies. It's a beautiful thing. I've never seen a bad afternoon unfold with Academy dotting the landscape. I've seen several bad afternoons unfold without Academy dotting the landscape. So everything negative that happens in our society would be rectified if you just had more Academy Sports and Outdoors. Now, I know what you're saying right now, or I think I do. Some of you are saying, I don't have one in my town, and I know that, and I'm here for you with good news. If you're watching the show, it is a fact that you have internet, which means you can go to academy.com and shop just like you would if you walked up and down the aisles. It's not as fun that way, but it's doable that way. They are the proud presenting partner of this show. They make this show free. They've been with us pretty much forever, and we appreciate them. I would say more than they know, but I tell Alex all the time. I text him XOXO, no context, because that's the kind of relationship we have with our partners. Okay, here we go. You know it's Tuesday night. It's prediction night. Got a good, healthy crowd watching. Live chat on fire. Make sure you subscribe, and even if you think you're subscribed, you may not be, so just check. LSU is going to South Carolina for the first time since 2008. Again, I should be scheduling for the SEC, but I don't control that. I do control where we go, and we are going to Columbia, South Carolina Saturday. In fact, I just changed my flight. I'm going to get out of here Thursday night. I'm going to spend all day Friday over there. Had Alyssa Lang send us a bunch of restaurant recommendations, and so we'll just knock them down one by one. Whole new Saturday tour fueled by Quick Trip on the road in Columbia. Noon kickoff on ABC. LSU has to win this game. I don't know how else to put it. You know it. You guys know it in Baton Rouge. You know it as well as I do. When you still got Ole Miss on the schedule, and you still got Bama, and you still got Oklahoma, you go to Texas A&M. The thing about it is, if you're not good enough to go into Columbia and win, I don't look at a road trip to Arkansas as a gimme, or a road trip to Florida, or a road trip to A&M, like I said. So you got like 6 more losable games minimum. If you start the season 1 and 2, I don't advise you starting the season 1 and 2. Okay, that's my first piece of expert analysis. Is I personally believe, write this down, Jesse, LSU should try and win this game. Now tell me where else you're going to get that. Part 2, South Carolina, I think, had the surprising result of the week last week. Now, it wasn't like Northern Illinois over Notre Dame, but it was pretty emphatic what they did when they went into Lexington. Does it carry over? They'll be sky high. This place will be on fire. I'm going to talk about the possible inclement weather. Justin King and the folks over in the creative media department, just press record. I'm going to do you all a great favor in a few minutes. But South Carolina's pass rush essentially won them that game last week. It was a huge advantage. Their pass rush at South Carolina against Kentucky's O-line, huge advantage Gamecocks. I flat out don't think that's an advantage for them this week. I think the matchup advantage is totally inverted. And I think if you're counting on getting to Nussmeier several times, you're either going to have to beat one of the best offensive lines and best offensive tackle combos in the country to do it, or part one of your game plan has been ripped out, and then you're just going to have to outscore LSU. South Carolina's pressure rate is #1 in FBS right now. Now, we're 2 weeks in, so make of that what you will. LSU pressure rate allowed, #6 in FBS. So they've protected Nussmeier really well. South Carolina's gotten after the quarterback really well. Both of them think that that will continue. Someone's wrong. We got to find out who. LSU wants to find a way to run the ball. South Carolina has to find a way to run the ball. LSU lost John Emery for the season, which is terrible, but it is what it is. So they can't do anything about that moving forward. They have that, but I also think about it as them losing Emery and Jaden Daniels. Even though Daniels was on last year's team, we were already talking about them having to replace that production, right? So John Emery, this was going to be his shot. Several years, it seems like, of underachievement. This was going to be his shot. He looked good in week 1, and now, boom, done for the year. Okay, you're LSU. You got to have more options than that. They don't have to be able to run the ball at a high level. They got to run it good enough. But they got a quarterback that if it has to be put on his shoulders, Garrett Nussmeier can be trusted to carry at least a majority of the offensive load. I don't know that Shane Beamer and South Carolina look at Garrett Nussmeier and then look at their guy privately and say, we've got every bit the same amount of confidence in him. They're confident enough in Sellers that he's their guy. That's not what I said. I said, are they confident enough in him taking over the game with his arm? That's not practical. That is not what they would expect him to do. That's not what they'd want to ask him to do. One of 11 teams in the country right now with no rushing touchdown. That's LSU. Okay, so it wouldn't be a shock if they couldn't run the ball effectively. They're 110th in rush yards. They're 89th in yards per carry right now. There's a world where they can't run it very well, and it's a bunch of 3rd and 5+, and Nussmeier just bails them out. Also, if you get him in 3rd and 5+, you've got the most underrated game day environment in college football breathing down your neck in Williams-Brice Stadium. You've got Dylan Stewart, who is an emerging star as a pass rusher, who could single-handedly flip a game. You got to deal with all that. That's the risk reward. If you can't run the ball on the road in the SEC, that's always the risk reward. If you got a quarterback that can bail you out, great. He's got to do it. He's got to do it. Nuss can be trusted. I don't know if South Carolina gets in that spot if Lenora Sellers can. And South Carolina was bad running the ball last year. Through 2 games, they're 115th in yards per carry this year. So that's a convoluted way of saying there's a world where neither of them runs the ball extremely effectively Saturday, which puts the game in the hands of the quarterbacks, which also puts a ton of variance in the equation. Which, when you think about Lenora Sellers' lack of experience, and you think about South Carolina's pass rushing capability against Nussmeier, turnovers become an issue, ball in the air more, a lot more variability. LSU seems to be getting a little healthy at wide receiver, reading reports from some of our folks over at Go247. Maybe close to getting some guys back on top of Kyron Lacey. We'll see about that. I think weather's going to be a factor here. Special teams, it can always be a factor in any football game. Shane Beamer's got to be banking on winning that category this Saturday. Like I said, a Dylan Stewart moment could change this game. And with so much variability in the equation, one edge rush, one tipped ball, one forced early throw across the middle could change the whole thing. But let me talk to you for a second about weather. It could rain Saturday. It could rain hard Saturday. It doesn't matter. I'm specifically talking to the South Carolina fan base and the South Carolina student body. I know good and well every one of you have been in a swimming pool once or twice in your lives. It's impossible to be more wet than you got in that swimming pool. So every one of you's been in a pool before. Every one of you's been soaked before. You're going to get wet this Saturday if it rains. Deal with it. What you don't have the opportunity to do in a swimming pool that you have a chance to do this Saturday is beat LSU at home. That's what you got a chance to do. And some of you need to do your research. If you're not already aware, it's not every day the nation focuses its collective attention on Columbia, South Carolina. It's not every day college game days in town. We haven't been over there once since I've worked at CBS, and I look for reasons to get over there. It's a premier moment. Some previous classes have gone there 4 years at South Carolina and not gotten a moment like this. So I couldn't care less what the skies look like Saturday morning. 12:01 Eastern time, you better bring it. You got a chance to affect this thing Saturday. You better bring it. Colin, show me what the model thinks. FanDuel right now, LSU -6.5. The model agrees and then some. We've got LSU -8. So I just did everybody over there as big a favor as I could do. Let me do Coach Beamer one more favor, because this is probably the cherry on top that he needs. LSU is going to win Saturday. LSU is going to cover Saturday. Moving on. Our tour all year. Boy, man, Jesse, what a cliffhanger, by the way. How about that? Build them up and tear them down. I love South Carolina. But LSU's got to win the game, man. Don't they have to win? They've got to win. Maybe they win by 3. Who knows? Our entire tour powered, fueled, if you will, by Quick Trip. Like I said, I've been to South Carolina before, but I have not been there in 4 years. So 2018 or 19, somewhere like that would have been the last time. It's been a little while. And I love that place. I vouch for it. I ride for South Carolina game day atmosphere. Hopefully the rest of the country sees it this Saturday. But we finally found a spot where we can get back over there. And Quick Trip is fueling us to and fueling us from. And we always appreciate them for that. The whole new Saturday tour in Columbia. Whomstead have thunk it? Me, kind of me. All right, let's move on. We got more games to predict. Bama is at Wisconsin Saturday. Look at those teams. Look at those Southern teams going north in, well, late summer. But still, they're going north. We were looking at this game. I had this one circled. We actually had already booked. We were going to be there. We were credentialed for it. We had hotel. We had flight. And then we said, swerve. Because the closer you look at this game, the more I get concerned, especially having gone to 2 blowouts already, that there could be some pretty good margin gained by the favorite in this game as well. So let's see what it would take. Bama's favored by 15.5 right now at FanDuel. What would it take for Wisconsin? Well, it's very simple and it's very complex. Tyler Van Dyke, quarterback there at Wisconsin, simply has to have the game of his life. If he does that, we were talking about South Carolina a second ago. Bama fans will remember the Steven Garcia game from 2010 when they went over to South Carolina and they got their doors blown off as a favorite, as the number 1 team in the country. Well, if Tyler Van Dyke has that out-of-body experience and he just drops balls in buckets to his receivers all Saturday, I don't think Alshon Jeffrey's playing in Madison, but nevertheless, if he's able to do that, then they got an opportunity. See, everybody tees it up that way. Oh, this is a huge opportunity for Tyler Van Dyke. It's an opportunity for him to have a career-defining game. It's also an opportunity for total embarrassment. So that goes both ways. Because what we're looking at here is him playing without high-level athletes and explosive athletes. I think South Florida probably threw better athleticism at Bama last week than Wisconsin will in this game. Not across the board at every position, but on the perimeter, maybe after this game, you'd probably get the truth out of Bama's staff. They probably think that. There are more than one or 2 ways to win a football game, but Wisconsin's not winning this thing on the perimeter. They're not winning it beating Bama deep. Precision, timing, rhythm, you got to have all that. And he's trying to do it with the 120th explosive play rate in the country for Wisconsin right now. They got a decent run game. Wisconsin's offensive line versus this pass rush is edge Alabama. So it's a weird spot because I don't know what Wisconsin's offensive identity is. You would think with Luke Fickell coming up there, last year in year 1, he brought over Phil Longo. So you think, well, they're ditching Paul Christ's way of doing things and Wisconsin's historic way of doing things, but it didn't work. So they're still not a very high-octane passing offense. They are not an ultra-physical downhill running offense. I don't really know what they are. I don't think this is necessarily the time of year and the opponent you're going to figure it out against. But if you do, it's a career definer for you. It feels like Alabama should be able to run the ball really effectively in this game. Wisconsin, against a G5 opponent and an FCS opponent, has given up 120 on the ground both weeks. They replaced a lot in their defensive front with Portal, and then they're starting some guys that are still fairly inexperienced. And this, I think, is where the loss of James Thompson on the defensive line really matters. And also, I think Bama lost a guy to targeting last week, and he'll sit out the first half. They lost Jake Chaney for the first half. That's Wisconsin's best linebacker. And so I just try and envision how games are going to start. And I think extra help in the box is going to be necessary to stop Bama's run. And unlike Wisconsin, Bama can absolutely beat you over the top. In fact, that is their passing game. Intermediate passing game, nowhere to be found. But they can dump it underneath, and they can burn you over the top. And they got the speed to take it to the house. It's highly likely, there's a high percentage chance that this takes on a Texas-Michigan feel, where it's a very defined way that the home team's got to win the game, but the road team takes the early lead and forces the road team or home team into a very uncomfortable position of trying to match scores, and they're not built to do it. The secondary for Wisconsin does give me a little hope because it is probably the strength of that defense at this point. You never know what takeaways can do in a football game. They've got to be there. I think they've got to be there. And also, while you're forcing them, you can't afford to give up any. And that was one of Tyler Van Dyke's biggest problems last year. And it could rear its ugly head here, especially if they're forced into a different kind of game script than the one that would be ideal for them. So let's take a look at what the model thinks. I think you may be surprised. Bama minus 15.5 at FanDuel. Model disagrees. Model leans Wisconsin. It's got Bama minus 13.5. So it does not lean Wisconsin to win outright. But I disagree because I think the quarterback and both line of scrimmage edges are in Alabama's favor. And I think that they'll end up running the ball extremely effectively and that this is not in doubt in the fourth quarter. So I got Bama winning by more than 16, so I got them covering as well. I know that wasn't a very cheerful, rosy prediction for Wisconsin, but man, they got to show me an offensive identity. I don't know. You play these teams that are in the top 10 and you're trying to figure out who you are. That's not the week you're going to figure it out, is all I'm saying. And history is very much on my side with that. And exception to the rule happens, I don't know that it's going to happen here. Now, we've got the JP poll right here. In fact, we wasted all of the color ink in the printer. But don't worry, it's not our ink. So here we go. JP poll week 3 edition has officially dropped. You hear it there. These are power ratings, kids. These are not rankings. You're going to see a lot of suspicious movement. You're going to see a lot of lack of movement from teams that lost. And this is simply how the model would stack these teams in neutral field favorability terms this upcoming week. So if you're ahead of a team, all that means is the model thinks you'd be favored on a neutral field this week. It doesn't mean you should go to the playoff before them. If you got 2 losses and you're still ranked in the top 12, it doesn't mean the model thinks you should be a playoff team. Has nothing to do with that. So here we go, starting with 1 through 5, because we're unchanged 1 through 4. Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, still 1 through 4. But my friends in East Tennessee, you have entered the JP poll top 5. Tennessee is number 5. They are up 5 spots. I should tell you, in the interest of full disclosure, there is a 10.5-point gap between Georgia, number 1, and Tennessee, number 5, right now. We move on 6 through 10, and the accordion goes from expanded to really contracted. Miami is unchanged. They're still the number 6 team in the country. It goes Ole Miss, Penn State, USC is in the top 10, and Oregon. Oregon's down to number 10. Oregon is down 7 total spots from their preseason placement. Like I told you, there is a low water mark coming for Oregon. This may be it. 10 may be as low as they go. I think there will be a rebound because I think that's a team that has not come close to fitting its profile yet. So better days, I think, are ahead for them in the JP poll. The point I wanted to make to you is number 6 Miami to number 10 Oregon. There is a 2-point gap, about a 2.1-point gap between 6 through 10. So this is really, really close here right now. Let's move along, Colin. Let's go to number 11. People said we have Missouri too low. They were right. Missouri's all the way up to number 11 now. Clemson is right back where they started. We had Clemson either 12 or 13 to start the season, and they're all the way back up after a brief plummet outside the top 15. So they're number 12 again. They're up 9 spots. LSU is 13. They are unchanged. Notre Dame fell 6 spots to 14. Utah dropped 1 spot to 15. That rating is with a healthy Cam Rising because we don't know anything other than that at quarterback right now. We're about to go through like the next 10, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you before Colin even flips the slider. So Utah's 15. We're about to have 5 Big 12 teams between 15 and 23, and there's a 5-point gap between 15 and 23. So the top of the Big 12 is as muddy as it could possibly be. Here we go. Number 16. Louisville is one of our more underrated teams in the country. They are just floating out there, totally anonymous. Go watch them. Look at their offensive line. It's a really good team. Louisville's number 16. Kansas State's down 5 to number 17. They got to wake up. We're going to talk about them later. They got to wake up. Like, I think they are something. They got to show that they are that thing. Texas A&M's number 18. Michigan didn't drop a whole lot because we already had Michigan pretty low, so they're 19, and Oklahoma is 20. There's no huge drop from Michigan. I think the AP dropped them like 7 spots or something like that. We had them already ranked way lower. Now, we took a lot of hate for it. No one's talked to us this week. So everyone who criticized it in the comment section turned into a ghost. That's okay. It's all fun and games until, when I'm wrong, I got to show up every week. But when you're wrong in the comments, you just get to disappear. But I know that was probably just bots because we got a bad problem with them, as some of you have noticed in the comment section. Someone asked, did you pay for all these bots? I'd pay to get rid of them. If any of you know how to get rid of the dreaded porn bots on the comment section, I would gladly hear you out. Number 21, Central Florida. Central Florida is up 4 spots to number 21. And do you know who they play this week? I'm going to skip down. So Iowa State's 22. We'll come back to that. Iowa's number 23. TCU's 24. Nebraska's 25. Jesse, I would blindly guess the AP has Nebraska higher than 25. I'm blindly guessing on that. But TCU is number 24. They host Central Florida this week. I think Central Florida is a 1.5-point favorite right now. We think the wrong team's favored. The model has TCU minus 1.5. Josh, how could that be? How could TCU be lower than UCF, but the model have TCU favored? Very good question. The answer is there's about a 0.5-point gap between them on a neutral field, and when home field is factored in, which we give about 2 points to for TCU, it equals TCU minus 1.5. Very simple, just simple math. Looking forward to that game. Is anyone talking about that? Is anyone talking about UCF at TCU? This is America's College Football Conference, people. We got to be paying attention to Big 12 games. So much so that we're going to bring one up in a little while. So there you go. There's your 1 through 10. Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Bama, Tennessee. Miami, Ole Miss, Penn State, USC, Oregon. Tennessee, 5 spots ahead of Oregon 3 weeks into the season. They're watching us in Redford, Virginia, Columbus, Ohio, Greenville, South Carolina, and King City, California. Oh, wildfires in Southern California today. Woof. I'm trying to kill time till I can find my lip balm here. Dew points are plummeting. It's that time of year. All right, let's continue. We're on a good pace. Don't start the debate yet. Tell them, Jesse. I can't hear you in my ear, but I know we got a line open to the other networks. Texas A&M at Florida is a completely confusing football game that's going to happen this Saturday. Colin, I don't even like that intro, so hold on a second. If you're watching live, just bear with me, because Colin has to cut these and put them up as individual cuts in the post-show process, and that sounded stupid. So here we go, Colin. Let's go 3, 2, 1. Texas A&M at Florida Saturday. Can any of you make any sense of this? Because we sat around a table for like 2 hours today. I've got a winner. I'm going to give you my predicted winner, but man, this could go either way. Texas A&M has not won a road game since 2021. What? So, yeah, I mean, they haven't been good, so that's not a big shock. Colin is showing you just a totally disrespectful, inexplicable slider, but it's fact. The most consecutive road losses, active FBS streaks, Temple, A&M, Akron, and Kent State. Is that the company we want to keep? Temple, Akron, and Kent, and A&M. One of these things is not supposed to be like the other. I feel so bad about it. Look, my arms are just hanging lifelessly outside the chair. So that's the question for A&M. Can you win on the road? Well, you know what the question for Florida is. The question for Florida is all around the quarterback position, and we had Graham Mertz start week 1, then he got concussed, so he goes into protocol. DJ Lagway starts last week against a high school team, looks really good, as 5-star quarterbacks tend to look against high school teams, and now everyone wants Lagway to start. But it's ultimately Billy Napier's call, right, Colin? So let's hear from the Florida head coach.
Well, I think our intention the entire time has been to play DJ in every game, right? And I think obviously he gets a little bit more experienced each week, and certainly for him to have the opportunity to be the starter, prepare with the ones, and then go play. And the way he did that, the poise, the composure, I just think it shows that he's ready to do what we intend to do with him going forward. So It's a blessing to have two really good quarterbacks, and certainly one with a ton of experience and one without. But there's no doubt both these guys will make us harder to defend. We intend to use both of them.
Yeah, so no one knows what's going to happen. Let me tell you what I do know. I learned this when Miami came in there. Florida badly needs something positive early because that place is fragile right now. Now, here's the good news. If you jump out to a 10-0 lead, the swamp will be the swamp. Everyone will be fired up. It'll be a raucous, intimidating environment. However, if you are down 10-0, like they were quickly against Miami, and then the game gets out of hand, everyone just sits around and calls for you to be fired. And it's like this big collection of Florida fans, because they all happen to be in a stadium, and all it's doing is fostering a toxic, negative environment. So it is in Florida's best interest for multiple reasons to get a fast start here. A&M giving up early in the year, A&M giving up 189 rush yards per game. Montrell Johnson, 6.7 yards per carry. So there's one matchup that we hope we can ride here. It's as simple and as difficult as extending drives and then developing rhythm, because that's not something that they were able to do in week one. And full disclosure, I didn't watch the Samford game. So week one, you had a critical amount of 3-and-outs. You can't stay on the field. The other guy does, and the game gets out of hand really quickly. However, as much as people are questioning what Florida's going to do at quarterback, and everyone's got their theory on who should start, and my theory is Graham Mertz should start, by the way. So I disagree with the Florida folks on that one. And I've been hearing about it all day because I got a little group text with a bunch of them. It's fine to question the Texas A&M quarterback situation too. You know, it's not like things just clicked out of the gate in week one for them either. Last week it was okay, but I don't think they got things fixed against McNeese. I don't think Connor Wigman going 11-14 with 125 passing yards against McNeese all of a sudden made us breathe a sigh of relief. Both of these sides have big questions at quarterback. There's nothing dynamic about A&M's passing game so far this year. There's nothing overly dynamic about the offensive skill players that they're going to take on the road. A&M's 129th in explosive passes. So you can question Florida. I question Florida. But I'm going to question the road team here as well. This game is the most likely game I see on the card this week to be lost instead of being won. And anyone who's watched this sport for a long time, you know, like if you watched the Arkansas-Oklahoma State game last week, that game got lost. Some of these things get won, and then some of them just get lost. Someone loses the game less than the other team. Therefore, they are the default winner. This feels like this kind of game to me. Also, going back to Billy Napier for just a second, what is his plan with DJ Lagway? He doesn't owe any of us an explanation pregame, but eventually 3:30 Saturday will arrive on ABC, and they'll kick this thing off, and we'll find out. And I think his role will be pretty significant in this game. And you just kind of picture in your mind this A&M pass rush and him evading that and him hitting a couple of guys behind the defense downfield and that being the difference in the game. That's not hard to envision. It just is hard to figure out beforehand. His skill set, you know, the more you think about the game, probably matches up with A&M better than Graham Mertz's does. He's just green. And so there's just a lot of risk that you have to accept in exchange for the reward that you may get out of him playing. Now, folks will say, well, we're already 0-1. Well, hey, we got to build for the future. Well, you can think that because you live in Ocala and work a normal 9-to-5 Monday through Friday, which I respect. But Billy Napier can't be thinking that way because he may be living in Ocala this time next year if he thinks that way. He's got to win now. And he's got to put the best guy in that gives them the best chance to win now. That's why Graham Mertz continues to be spoken about the way he's spoken about. Let's take a look at what the model thinks here. FanDuel's got A&M minus 4.5. The model could not agree more. A&M minus 4.5. I flat out think it's wrong. I think Florida's going to find a way to cover the game, and I think Florida is going to find a way to win the game in the process. Am I confident in this? Not exactly. Am I betting it? No, I am not. Am I standing by my prediction? Probably. But see me again Friday, to be sure. Next up, speaking of Friday, and this is where you guys really need to pay attention if you are just lovers of this sport like we are here, and we tend to be. Arizona's playing Kansas State Friday night. Clear your schedule. I mean, I know some of you got high school football. Once you get home from high school football, watch this game. This is America's college football conference, but it's not a conference game. Somehow, some way, these games were already scheduled. So even though Arizona and Kansas State are in the same conference and they're playing Friday, this is not a conference game. But it's a good one. There is no way Kansas State has run their offense this year. They ho-hummed their way through 2 weeks. They almost lost to Tulane. You simulate that game again, more times than not, they probably do lose that game, but they won it. But they won the first 2 weeks with Avery Johnson carrying the ball 11 times for 77 yards. That's the quarterback there. And against UT Martin and Tulane's one thing. And DJ Giddens, the running back there, he's run for 7.4 yards per carry. I got to imagine Avery Johnson could run the ball 11 times in this game alone. They may be saving that for conference play or saving that for bigger games. Whatever their thinking is whatever it is. But that is not Kansas State's offense. It can't be. Now, are they going to need it here? Like, do they need him to take over the game on the ground? Because they got a couple guys in the backfield they trust to carry the ball. Kansas State, 498 rush yards this year so far through 2 games. That's 7.8 per carry. So they're really good at running the ball. Arizona, 82nd run defense in the country. It's very early. So you've played 2 opponents. So it is what it is. Arizona, fast start. Very important here. Very important because obviously run-oriented teams have to change game script if they have to play catch-up. I think they can attack Kansas State on the edges here. Tet McMillan may be the best wide receiver in the country or one of the very best in the country. There is wild fluctuation in the outcome week 1 to week 2 for Arizona. They played New Mexico and lit them up. They played Northern Arizona last week, and it was awful. They were 0 of 10 on third down. They had 10 penalties. They had 361 total yards. McMillan had like 1 catch. So that's not their offense either. But listen to this. So Tulane last week. If you start thinking about what Arizona could do through the air, Tulane last week against Kansas State had completed passes of 15 yards, 17 yards, 17 yards, 53 yards, 36, 37, 28, 47, 22, and 26. They lit Kansas State up through the air and with yards after the catch. And all due respect to John Summerall and the guys down at Tulane, there is no Tet McMillan on Tulane. There is on Arizona. First quarter is very important here. Does Kansas State have to open it up? They can throw the ball. It's not their forte, yeah. But they can throw the ball. But if they start churning out 7 or 8 yards per carry, then it becomes a little more fundamental and academic for them. Let's take a look at what the model thinks, Colin. Kansas State minus 7.5 right now at FanDuel. If you talk about game script one way or the other, the model massively leans Kansas State. It thinks Kansas State will take over this game. I'm not betting the game, but I'm going to ride with the model. If it's 4 points off the Vegas number, the FanDuel number, give me Kansas State to win, give me Kansas State to cover. Our friends at FanDuel powering the odds machine here on the show. They also power Ramen Noodle Express, and they power Friday Night Lines. Friday Night Lines, if you're unfamiliar, and we'll do it this Friday night in Columbia, is I get into my hotel room on Friday night, I pull up the model, you know, the one that's giving us all these hypothetical numbers on the show. The model has been above 57% against the spread every year since we've worked here. It's one money every year. Don't listen to the haters who pick anecdotal examples to the contrary. It's one money every year. So I sit in my hotel room on Friday night. I take the iJosh out. I prop it up with this little kickstand my sister bought me. Check that out. And I go on Instagram Live at LateKickJosh, powered by FanDuel, and I take the live chat, and you guys throw games at me, and I just tell you what the model thinks. It's so fun. It's communal. It's free. It's great. Management doesn't even know it exists. And so make sure you're following on Instagram at LateKickJosh. I have one more best bet to add for you. So we got Middle Tennessee State plus 7.5 earlier in the week. We got Missouri minus 15.5. That one's moved to 16.5. Still like it at that number, just not as much. I am adding a rare midweek total. We think that there is a decided advantage to the over in the Memphis-Florida State game. We think both of these offensive support staffs are better than their defensive counterparts. And anytime we get a two-way go on coaching edge on one side of the ball versus the other, we will absolutely take action on that total. So 52.5 is right there at FanDuel right now. Memphis, Florida State over 52.5. And we got the show in. Hold on just a second. Let's say some things in the live chat, and boom. I just banned someone in the live chat because that's how we have to swing the hammer around here. So we're out of here. There you go. ABC, you guys can take it over now. I don't even work for you, but you can have your presidential debate. I'm not running until at least 2028, so I got nothing to do with this thing tonight. We just got to go edit the show now. So for Director Colin, Producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. We are going to start the Thursday show early. 5 Eastern, 4 Central. Starting it early Thursday because I got to catch a flight. Until then, take care and God bless.